recruiting process, whether that's actually applying for a summer internship or a full-time job offer, that can be very stressful for most college students. Do you mind sharing some recruiting tips or tricks that students can use to become more successful at this recruiting process?
Yep. And by the way, for your students' sake, it's really funny to me working as a recruiter now, because when I think back to that time for me, at the time, I thought I was really good at recruiting. Now, as a recruiter, I kind of understand some of the mistakes that I made. And I think overthinking things is definitely a problem, but to dial it all the way back to the start, because when I was a student, I think one of the first battles is just knowing that there are more firms than the big four, or that there are more firms than just 8 or 10 firms out there. There are a lot of firms out there. Some of them are great boutique firms that you wouldn't know about because maybe they don't have the advertising budget or the branding budget that bigger firms have. And so the first tip or trick that I think I'd offer is kind of start with a list of accounting firms. It's very simple, and the thought had never occurred to me when I was a student, but if you just Google accounting today top 100 firms, you'll find a list. Now, it does require some poking around and some clicking in the right place here or there. But once you get to, I think the 2019 version is out there. I think maybe the 2020 version is out there too. This will give you a list of 100 firms, right? And you can start with that list, and you can whittle it down to just, let's say your students are, I'm assuming most of your students want to start at a firm in the state of California. So right away, you can chop off like half of the top 100 firms who don't have offices in California, right? So once you get the list down to just firms in California, then you can start taking a closer look at some of these firms. But that's the first tip I would offer, is just knowing what firms are out there and what services they offer. Most will offer audit and tax services, but the starting point of even knowing who the firms are or what their names are or where they're located, starting with that accounting today top 100 firms list is one thing I would recommend. One of the other tips I would say is it's kind of a two-way street, right? What is a firm looking for? And then what are you looking for? So let's start with what the firm is looking for. For most of your students, a really great place to start with is look at the job descriptions. In the job description, it will say a successful auditor at Squar Milner will be adaptable, will be a good team player, will demonstrate leadership, is a self-starter, or whatever the language or verbiage that's used. Look at that, and they're telling you point blank what skills they're looking for, so that when you start talking to these firms, you want to talk about those skills that you have, but you don't know. Nobody just walks in and says, I have really good time management skills. That would be a weird way to start a conversation with anyone, wouldn't it? And so instead, what you start doing is you have to think about examples in your life that display that you have those skills. So you could talk about your time. I was a student at Santa Monica College. I was working a full-time job, 40 hours a week, while caring for my nieces and nephews. And I was able to keep all my family commitments, keep my job commitments, my work commitments, and I was also a very good student at Santa Monica College. That right there displays that you have time management skills without just saying, I have time management skills. You're giving an actual example. So that would be the second tip I would offer, is look at the skills that firms are telling you they want and think of examples and experiences from your life in which you've displayed that you have those certain skills. The third one that I would offer, third tip would be, this one's a little harder. What are you looking for, right? Because once you get past I'm looking for a work-life balance or a certain salary, or I'm looking for, a benefits list or a location, or I don't want a long commute. Once you get past those things and you get into the what would your ideal boss be like? Who would your ideal coworkers be? When are you at your happiest when you're working? And you start looking at these things kind of the same way that some people pick a college. Now, sometimes it's out of necessity. To be very honest with you, when I went to El Camino College, It was the closest community college, and I knew I was going to a community college right after high school. Really didn't matter, right? But for other people, there's a lot longer of a process in selecting what college they're going to go to. For any of your UCLA students, they could have gone to a lot of different universities and they chose UCLA. They made their list of things that were important to them and they selected based on that. So if you're comfortable at a big firm, maybe one of the big four is a really good fit for you. If you know that you operate a lot better in smaller teams and you don't want to work in a big environment, maybe they're not a good fit for you. Maybe you prefer working for a boutique firm. So spend some time thinking about what you really want. Are you looking for mentorship? Are you looking for one-on-one time? Are you looking for a firm that has great technology where you don't necessarily need one-on-one time? There's a bunch of online training platforms that you can just plug into that and teach yourself and learn that way. All of these things kind of matter for what you want, but you have to spend some time thinking about what you want. And then the last one is a very simple one. And I've seen Steve Milner, the managing partner of our firm, say this to countless people. Just trust your gut. Full disclosure, I'm not a big plus and minus checklist kind of person. But because everything in public accounting is so based on relationships and your relationship with other people, trust your gut. When you think about your friends, think about when you're picking and choosing who your friends are. You don't make a checklist for your friends, do you? My friend Tim, really smart guy, really likes sports, likes all this stuff. Check, check, check. Yeah, but the minus is, blah, 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 whatever. Nobody does that. You trust your gut. When you meet someone and you get a feeling that they're a good person or that you're going to be friends, isn't that based on a gut feeling and not some sort of itemized checklist? So in recruiting, I would urge your students to do the same thing. Trust your gut. The firms and the people that you meet and that you feel good about, that's wonderful. The ones that you meet and it just doesn't quite sit right or it felt fine but not as good as that other firm, trust your gut. That's not a firm you want to work for.
Well, these are great recruiting tips. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, where can a student turn to further develop their recruiting skills?
So shameless plug, you can always reach out to me. One of the things that I really enjoy about my role as a recruiter is if I think about it, in my time, I'm going to meet more people that will not work for Squar Milner than will work for Squar Milner. Now, obviously, keep in mind, I am employed by Squar Milner. At the end of the day, I need to be able to hire people that will end up working here. But on the other side of that, I love anyone who's serious and passionate about finding what they want and recruiting and interviewing, any of that kind of stuff. I'm more than happy to talk to them, even if they ultimately don't wind up working at Squar Milner. So you can start with me. I'm always a wonderful resource, and you have my contact information that you can share with the students, and I have no problem with you sharing any of that information. But going down the list, other great sources of information for about firms or about recruiting or to develop their recruiting skills. Firms' websites themselves. During the quarantine, a colleague of mine and I spent a lot of time looking at the different websites of all the different firms just to see what looks cool and what doesn't out there. What websites look like they were made in the early 2000s and haven't been developed since, and other ones that really have a bunch of just rich content, a lot of good information laid out really well and fun to access. So a lot of the firms out there have a lot of really good, helpful information on the recruiting process and the hiring process that, to be honest with you, is pretty universal for most firms. The other one I would highly recommend, and this again this is not entirely a self-promoting plug, but recruiters are probably the best people for you to reach out to on the recruiting trail. And the reason I'm saying that is that recruiters are excellent at connecting you with other people. They're the ones that can connect you with a manager, with a partner, with a staff, and they're easy to find. If you just go to LinkedIn and look at any of the firms, remember that list of 100 firms I was telling you about? Go off that list, pick a firm, go to LinkedIn and do the filter option, click that firm and the location you want, and then just type in recruiter and see if you can find the person that way. We're usually pretty easy to find. We're very easy to talk to, and we're great people to start with. And then lastly, the way to develop your skills, practice, practice, practice. And the fun thing with that is it doesn't have to be a recruiter. It doesn't have to be an interviewer. You can practice your stories on your brother or your sister or your mom or your dad, family members. You can practice telling these stories in a way that doesn't sound like it's an interview, right? It sounds like it's just a casual conversation that you had with, you could be talking to some friends and just kind of talk about how, at first I really didn't like going, I didn't like this movie, but then after I looked at this aspect of it and that aspect of it, I learned that I really did like it. You're talking about adaptability, right? You're talking about a skill that maybe you're not putting it in those terms, but your ability to practice with friends and family, you get that chance almost every single day. And you don't get good at telling these stories without practicing them. And the nice thing is you can make mistakes in practice. That's great. So by the time that you're speaking with a recruiter or an accounting professional, you're all polished up and you're ready to go.
Well, all this is great information. Thanks you so much for coming today to make this video for me and sharing your words of wisdom. Also, I really appreciate you generously offering to help some of my students or viewers. And I will go ahead, since you said it's all right, I'm gonna go ahead and post your email address in the video description below so that they can reach out to you if they have additional questions. So thanks again, Garrett. I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming recruiting season.
And whether that's through a Zoom call or in person, I absolutely look forward to it. Thank you very much.